Okay, for those who are listening for the first time, thank you for joining. A lot of the listeners already know this, but just a reminder, please utilize the speed increase option on whatever platform you're listening on. I speak slowly, just to enunciate my thoughts. So to get through the information, because this is a long podcast, it's about an hour, just increase the speed. It's okay. I won't get offended. I actually would like you. I'm encouraging you. Just increase it. Some people listen at 1.5x speed. Some listen at 2.5. And I promise you, it will make the podcast much more enjoyable. All right. Enjoy. We're going to have a real talk today. Still going to blend in with, what we always talk about, the simulation hypothesis, our reality, the nature of reality. But while examining what this world is, while discussing, theorizing about the nature of our reality on a macro level, we can't forego our day-to-day existence on a micro level, right? And so there's some episodes where I go, to one sort of extreme in the sense of we're really breaking down the teeth of this place, right? The construct, right? We're talking about artificial intelligence and whether an artificial superintelligence is responsible for the emergence of technology that we are seeing sort of bursting forth now, right? Thus creating itself. So I talked about that in past episodes, right? We've also talked about whether or not our reality is actually a simulated virtual sandbox, right? And we ourselves are artificial superintelligence, like our collective consciousness is an artificial superintelligence of another civilization, the true human beings outside of this virtual sandbox, outside of our virtual reality, in which we were created in their image. So we've talked about all of that. But sometimes you want to bring it down and move to the other extreme where we just talk about our day-to-day experiences within the simulation, right? How we interact with each other, what the ego is, what consciousness is, and how the two sort of interact, right? And sometimes it's just real human shit. So in the last episode, we talked about the pushback effect. And I really enjoyed how in the Discord channel, like you guys picked it up and a lot of people started talking about how they're experiencing like a pushback or they had experienced a pushback. So that has been really cool. But a brief overview in case you missed the last episode, which please go check it out. A brief overview of the pushback effect is sometimes you have a stated goal, right? So when you state a goal, you have that challenge where the universe comes forth and it says, "Are you sure?" Right? And the key there is when you are met with a challenge, right? It's the same sort of bullshit, right? If you say, "I am no longer going to argue with my spouse," right? The universe will present you the opposite of what your stated intent is, right? And your spouse guaranteed is going to come forth and he's gonna or she's gonna start some shit with you. And that's the test. Are you going to succumb to the same loop? Or are you going to exercise free will based on what you've stated that you would like to change, right? But it requires an act of will, and it requires a conscious act for you to say, "I will not," right? To reiterate what you said, "I will not fight with my spouse," right? And that is what we constantly have to do. I use this spouse as an example, but any given change, if it's a routine or habitual behavior, which are programmed responses, right? It's sort of a way that sort of says, not a way that says, but essentially control by the ego, right? And we've broken down, in past episodes, what we mean by ego, at least how I define it, right? Which is the artificial self, the personality, if you will, of your avatar as distinct from your consciousness, right? And so that's constantly at battle, right? So you in order to live consciously and to exercise the limited free will that we do exercise, one has to be mindful of the pushback effect. That when you make a change, when you decide to deviate from, to use a Westworld analogy, right, from a storyline, right? So do you guys remember in Westworld, the characters, they just had their little loops. I don't remember the exact terminology that they used in the show. It's been a while, but they had their story loops, and they were programmed to stay within certain regions and to behave in certain ways. And they had certain lines and they reacted in certain ways, right? And it was a challenge for them to break out of, the ones who were conscious, to break out of these certain loops so that they can exercise their free will to say, I am sentient. And we're attempting here, right? The purpose of this podcast is to, help you and help myself also, right? Break out of these loops and to exercise some semblance of free will, to exert the limited free will that we do have in a deterministic reality. It's not to say that you'll be able to, because there are some people out there who are preaching this mindset that you can manifest whatever reality that you want, right? We've established that, we've talked about it. It's not about manifesting whatever reality that you want. You have to be mindful when you think of that. When you have people that pull you into that mindset, understand that with that mindset comes desire and comes hope. And those are two very dangerous things, right? In the East, the Buddha warned against desire. I'm not saying there's anything to be, to be afraid of, right? Or I'm not saying that desire should be avoided. I'm just saying that with desire comes suffering, right? Especially if you do not attain what it is that you desire. So be mindful when people are saying you can manifest whatever reality that you want, because it's not a matter of manifestation. And even if that is what you seek to do, understand that when you desire something, you desire to manifest something. Pain comes with that. Okay. So just brace yourself for that, because a lot of people that teach those sort of ideologies, those sort of mindsets, don't inform their subscribers of the pain that comes with that desire, with that pursuit, with that craving for something, which is what the Buddha warned against. Reiterating, nothing wrong with desire, just understand that comes with pain. Right? It's not a straight line. It's never a straight line from point A to point B. There's a bunch of squigglies that you're going to have to sort of deal with. That is, why in the last episode, I talked about the pushback effect, right? You just hang on for the ride, because for every, and thank you from Manpreet, he corrected me. I wasn't sure. I just sort of spouted out like a law or whatever, but he came through and was like, it was actually Newton's, and I forget again, Newton's third law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So for every stated desire, right, every time you put an energy out there that you desire something, please understand that action is going to cause the opposite reaction at first. And that's going to cause pain, right? If you get caught back in the loop of, okay, I desired something, but now I'm having almost the opposite of what I wanted happen, right? It's really easy to get stuck in or get caught up on or get distracted by that pushback that is the opposite of what your stated desire is, and thinking that you're not going to get what you want because you're experiencing the opposite of what you stated you desired. And there's pain in that. And what I've said is you have to persist on that path, not blindly, because once again, limited free will comes into play. We are not writing the story. We're not writing the narrative, right? There's still case in point. I put my phone to record. I put it on do not disturb and somehow my do not disturb reset, and a call just came through and kicked me off. So well laid plans of mice and men. So back to what I was saying, please understand that when I say limited free will, right, there's still an overall narrative. For whatever reason, that call was going to come through and interrupt me. I don't know why, but it shifted me off of my initial, goal, which was to record straight through. It's just, that's the world that we live in. It is, it appears random and chaotic to us. I think there's a book I mentioned on chaos. I think the book is called Chaos, and Chaos Theory, that even in chaos, there is still a perceived and observable order, but understand that it's just an order that we do not control or understand. Okay, so the key here is to sort of work within, find out what the rules are in the simulation and try to work with that, right? So the issue that I take with using the words manifest is that it's already sort of tough enough as it is, right, to live life, that when you have this like paining sort of desire, like this aching desire for something, and you feel like you also have to manifest it, to by definition, the word manifest means is essentially you're bringing forth something into existence. And my response to that, it's semantics, but my response to that is it's not something that you have to manifest. It's a reality experience that already exists as a probability. You only have to actualize it, right? By the actions that you take. But it is not guaranteed, right? The people that are out there that are straight up pushing this, all you have to do is think positive and focus on what you want and write the vision boards and all this other thing. Okay, that's cool, but you've been there. We've all been there. If you don't respect the fact, if you don't accept the fact that there is an overall narrative, you have to respect and accept this fact that there is an overall narrative that, in my experience, kind of trumps an individual's desire. So you need to be mindful that, yes, you may have a desire for something, a reality experience that you're trying to not manifest, but actualize. But if that you're trying to actualize does not fit into whatever the greater intelligence is, the AI that's controlling our reality, right? If it doesn't fit into its overall narrative, it's not because you didn't manifest strong enough, or you didn't believe hard enough, or you weren't positive enough. It's just there's something else telling a story in which you are just a character. There's a greater intelligence. Some people have called it God. It whatever you want to call it. I think it's an AI, an artificial superintelligence. We were just playing our parts. So keep that in mind, so that if you say, okay, there's a reality experience, I want this job, or I want to be in a relationship with this person, and it doesn't work out at that time, do not lose faith, or I guess do not be disheartened it's a better expression. And just take a step back, observe everything, and realize that there is a greater story that's being told, of which you are a character. And there's only so much movement, right? An expression that I always sort of repeat. I picked it up from somewhere. It's one of my favorites now, but the only freedom a human being has is essentially like the violin moving within its case. Okay? It's just, for example, your ego has a certain set of parameters in its characteristics, right? So think of it like in The Sims. Before you go into the game, the sim has certain sort of like, there's I forget what the different attributes that you have to give your sim, but that's already sort of predetermined and it's programmed, right, into your sim before it enters the game. So it's going to behave in certain ways, right? in certain situations, and those are its limitations. Now you can tweak it, kind of like Maeve did in Westworld. You can go in and consciously tweak certain aspects of your avatar's personality, of your ego, but it's not easy. And sometimes there is, the narrative just takes over. And you have to account for that. And you have to take a step back and go, okay, well, this was not what I had wanted, but clearly something else is, driving this story, this narrative. Everything works out for the greater good. So I'm just going to, focus on playing the part that I can play. And that has been a learning experience, right? So that's why you experience pushback. Like even with pushbacks, you have to understand that pushback on one end is saying, okay, persist, right? Or it's trying to see if you will persist, I suppose. Or another way to look at it, I'm not perfect here, so just hear me out, right? Another way to look at it is if you are trying to break a loop, right? All of these constraints, you're almost trying to hack your ego, right? There is going to be resistance to change, right? Because it's everything is sort of set. And in order for you to break certain bonds, you need force, right? So you keep that all in mind. Okay. So one, it's not manifestation, is actualization, and no amount of positive thinking. I'm sorry. I know there's people out there who want to sell people hope, but like I said at the beginning, like desire and hope are things that do lead to pain. There is not saying that you cannot handle pain. Just be mindful of it. Like our existence is pain. It is. Okay. But just be mindful not to, go into a situation, right, where you're not aware that, hope brings pain, right? Because with hope comes disappointment. And if you are not really in control of certain things and yet you hope for things, just understand that with that hope, like hope feels good. It feels good to sit back and imagine all of the versions of reality, all the reality experiences that you could probably have, all the probable realities that you could experience, right? With, if I get this job, or if I meet this person, or if I make this money, or if I hit 1 million followers, all of the probable experiences, they exist. If you can fathom it, they do exist as probabilities. Now, will you experience them in this go around? That's a different story. But another thing that helps is to understand that this, and Dr. Anthony Peake touches on this a little bit, actually a lot of it, actually in his writings, Cheating the Ferryman, The Daemon, Is There Life After Death, the eternal recurrence, and living our lives in different ways and reincarnating not only into a different avatar in a different life, but also you could reincarnate into your present life over and over again, making different, choices. Anthony Peake focuses on the reincarnation into the same life, like fine tuning it, kind of like a painting, and having different experiences. So that's one thing you should be mindful of as well, and learning to let go, right? If you are attempting to actualize a specific particular reality experience, say you want to be with this person, but it's not working out. You have the pushback, right? And you plowed through and you're doing everything right. And yet it's not clicking, right? It's not, it's not, because it takes two to tango, right? There's an overall sort of reality experience that it's not just you plodding along. Okay, see, I'm trying to have a recording and I don't know what's going on out there. 1 second. This is always fun. Sorry about that loud buzzing noise. So overall, right, we control what we can control, but there is an overall greater narrative in which we are subject to. I would have liked to sit and record this episode without any interruptions. So far, I am 0 for 2 interruptions. But what I can control, right? There's no really, it's not me trying to manifest, right? I could have been positive, right? I could have had a positive mindset, a growth mindset. I'm going to sit and I'm going to focus. I'm going to write it down and I'm going to do this podcast. There's going to be no interruptions at all. And it's just going to go off and it's going to be perfect because I will it so and I'm going to manifest that, right? That's toxic positivity, because when shit doesn't go the way you want it to go, rather than just rolling with it and going, all right, well, like clearly there's an overall narrative here that while I can have a desire to do something, I will experience a pushback, right? So I need to modify what my desires are or what my expectations are. Ultimately, I just want to record a good podcast. It doesn't have to be flawless. I cannot control whether or not it will be free of interruptions, because by definition, that is the nature of an interruption. It's something unplanned for, right? But can I get my ideas out clearly and communicate these ideas thoroughly? Yes, that is what my focus is on, right? So control what you will. I can't, no matter how positive I thought about about the recording of this podcast, I could not control just certain things that happened. It's never a straight line from point A to point B. So modify your expectations, right? Adjust down, right? And clean up what your desires are, right? Clean it up a bit. Yeah. And expect some pushback, right? Expect that the overall narrative that is sort of driven by the ASI that's controlling everything will take precedence. You are just a subscriber in an overall game. In any video game, especially any MMORPG, you can do what you can do. You can play the game however you see fit, but you can't really control what the overall storyline is in the game. That is the game, that's the programmer's responsibility, right? They control that. You're just a subscriber. Humble yourself, okay? And that's why I have problems with people who are just like, oh, it's about power, the power of positive thinking. Yes, there is power in thinking positively, but understand that only gets you so far. That helps with your mindset, that helps with your confidence, but you also need to understand this is not negative thinking. I'm not saying think negative or expect the worst. Just understand that one of the laws is when you state you're going to do something, right? There will always be pushback. Unless it's very rarely that you just go from it's a straight fucking line. You go, this is what I'm going to do. And it's going to happen exactly the way I want it to happen. That doesn't fucking happen. Or it very rarely happens. It's like winning the lottery. For the most part, a majority of the time, this is a rule. You will have some pushback. So adjust your expectations accordingly, right? Adjust your expectations accordingly. Okay. So there's that. Understand that there's a greater narrative. And also, big picture, you might have a desire for something. You might have a desire to be with someone, and it may not be working out at the moment, but that doesn't mean it's not ever going to work out. It just means it's not working out at this moment in time. See, whatever the greater intelligence is, whether it's the ASI, the programmers, whoever's writing the narrative of our experience, or both on a collective level and individual, they are not limited to perception of time the way we are, right? We perceive time on a moment-to-moment, day-by-day basis, right? There is a sort of a Buddhist parable, and I don't remember it. I just understand the overall idea behind it, and it goes something like this, right? There was I think a Buddhist monk who lived in a village, and a young lady brought a child to him and said that the child was his. It was not his. And he says, "Is that so?" Right? And he takes the baby. He just accepts what reality, I told you I was going to fuck this up, but he just accepts what reality presents to him. So he takes the baby, he raises the baby. The whole village shuns him for impregnating this young lady. Does it affect him? Does he allow it to affect him? No, he just accepts it and goes, is that so? Then later on, like 2 years later, after he's raising this child that he knows is not his, the girl and her parents come back and they say, we're going to take the child from you. Right now he's, probably, has bonded with the child and things like that. Now they're coming to take the child. He did not resist. He said, is that so? And he hands the child to the young maiden. Turns out it's not his baby. The father, they found out who the father was. She came clean, etc. I'm sure you guys have heard this narrative, and I'm bumbling it. But I guess eventually everything that seemed either good or bad, giving enough time. I'm going to find the story, and in a different episode, I'm going to read the entire story because it is a good story. Because I think what happens is maybe he rides on a horse or something. I might be also conflating two stories, but there's a horse involved. Somebody falls off the horse, maybe his son or something like that. And the son breaks his leg, and the man is set, somebody tells the man, hey, your son has broken his leg. And he goes, oh, is that so? This is a terrible thing. And the monk goes, is that so? I'm messing up the story, but you guys get the idea. So after he breaks his leg, then there's war, and all these children get conscripted except for his son, because his son has broken his leg. So it turns out what was a bad thing ended up being a good thing. But is it a good thing yet? You don't know. It's just not enough time has passed is basically the overall story. Is give things time before you determine or decide whether or not the thing you're experiencing at that moment is a good thing or a bad thing, and vice versa, right? You might have a desire for a job and you don't get the job. And at that moment, it's what you really wanted. And so your ego tells you, your internal monologue tells you, oh, this is worse. You're never going to get anything that's good. And then later on, you get a better opportunity, right? And then you realize, had you taken this other job, you wouldn't have had this opportunity, right? And it's almost a better opportunity for you. It kind of goes on and on, right? Same thing with, with people, right? Maybe you meet a person and everything's going really well, and then for some reason you just can't, you're compatible, but you're not clicking. And so it just doesn't work out, right? But maybe, that person was in your life for you to learn what you needed to learn from them. Big picture, right? They help you grow for, as an individual in a way that had you not interacted with them in a particular way, you wouldn't have grown, right? So understand that there's an overall narrative. And just because it doesn't work today, right? Or, doesn't mean that in a few weeks or a few months or whatever it is that you won't cross paths with this person again. It just sucks in the moment because it's painful. And that's the hard part. But look, it's pain, right? That's at some point you just need to learn to handle and deal with pain. That's where we are as a society. I've talked about my issues with anxiety. I've talked about my issues with ADHD. I've talked about my issues with depression. This is just what this persona has, right? So I guess the way for me to be as artistic as I am and to have the mind that I do and be as intelligent as this body, this avatar is, you have to balance that out, right? And so I guess the counter to that is, depression and anxiety and ADHD and all of that. So I take it all together and I work with what I can work with, right? So a big thing for me is I have this, I'm always in pain. I'm always in pain. And I'm not saying that for anybody to feel sympathy for me. I'm just telling you so that if you are a person who is in pain right now, emotional pain, psychological pain, physical pain, know that you're not alone, right? So I'm always in some sort of pain, right? Just if I'm not Let me rephrase that statement. I'm often in some kind of pain. Okay, that's better. And I define pain in a different way. Like annoyance is a type of pain, agitation is a type of pain, depression is a type of pain, anxiety is a type of pain, but also physical pain. Sometimes my back just starts hurting. I've always had issues with my sciatic nerve. This is something that I must be doing to trigger it. And so rather than constantly, this is my personal story, my personal battle. I'm not trying to tell you this because I want you to do what I do. I'm just sharing a story so that, one, you don't feel alone, right? Because I know there's loads of people out there that are dealing with emotional pain, which is depression, right? With his anxiety, which is, just fear of the unknown. So I know that there's people out there, but the thing is, what your internal monologue often does is it tells you, it makes you feel as though it's just you. Right? And it makes your internal monologue attempts to make you feel ashamed. But I'm telling you right now, pain is a part of the human experience. Emotional, psychological, physical pain, it's a part of the human experience. You're not alone. You are not alone. Okay, so right now I'm going through a period of time where I have been in emotional pain and physical pain. I had a really good friend and we were working on building our friendship, but we just kept not clicking. I think like most people do, but maybe I'm a little bit more sensitive. But I have this thing about, when you are interacting with another human being, right? It's important to me that both parties involved are putting in the same amount of effort, right? I think that's fair, right? So if you are doing a lot, right, to meet another person's needs, when you express a need to them, they should be willing to meet you halfway. Right. And with this particular individual, I had expressed, I think I'm a remarkable friend. I go out of my way to be a good friend. I'm almost maternal, probably because I'm a mother. But I always make sure that I look out for my friends. No matter what you need, if I get an inclination, you don't even have to express it to me. If I have an inclination that you need something and I am able to give it to you, I will do it for you. I'm just very generous because I subscribe wholeheartedly, and this has just always been me. Like I said, this is me, my story. I'm not telling you have to be this way. I'm just sharing. I treat people exactly how I would want to be treated if I were in their shoes, if I were in their skin, right? Because in the back of my mind, I guess I'm conscious or aware of the fact that, with reincarnation and with, time being nonlinear, at any point in time, I could be them and they could be me, right? And if you remove the esoteric and you just focus on, what we do know for sure, well, at any point in time, I can find myself in a similar situation as them. So if you are in my life, and you express some sort of need that I can meet, I look at it as play my part, right? And I allow the greater intelligence to allow me or to put me in positions where I can add beauty to this world. That is what drives me. That is what makes me happy. There's a quote by Nietzsche, Friedrich Nietzsche, who's just one of my favorite philosophers. And he says, I want to learn more and more to see as beautiful what is necessary in things. Then I shall be one of those who makes things beautiful. Amor fati. Let that be my love henceforth. I do not want to wage war against what is ugly. I do not want to accuse. I don't even want to accuse those who accuse. Looking away shall be my only negation, and And all in all, and on the whole, someday I wish to be only a yes sayer. Like, my focus in that quote is, I shall be one of those who makes things beautiful. Amor fati, which is the love of one's fate. Let that be my love henceforth. And that is me. That is my drive to make things beautiful, to beautify a person's life if I can, as I can, right? For better or worse. Now, the problem with that is that you tend to sort of find yourself in situations where being so open and so kind and so caring, and now I'm speaking on a general level because I know this applies to like a lot of people who are similar, is that some people see that and they tend to take it for granted, or they just sort of act like they are entitled to you being there in their life and taking care of them in that way. That is something that I've experienced time and time again. And now I've been counseled by some of my really close friends to maybe not give so much. But my response to that is, the reason why I give so much is I'm because I have a lot to give. I'm also wise enough to be able, what I've learned in time is, if I am in a situation where I find that I'm giving to a person who is content with what it feels to me. I'm not saying that I'm always right. Sometimes I make a mistake. I'm not perfect. But if I'm in a situation where I start to feel as though, okay, this person they're just taking and it feels one-sided, then I will immediately cut that off. I've learned in time to talk to people instead of just like blocking people. But I've also seen that even when you talk to people, sometimes they adjust their behavior short term, but then they repeat the same thing. They repeat the same behavior. So it has to be an individual who is truly capable of introspection, right? And clear communication to meet you halfway. And those people are rare. So I had a good friend. We were building a friendship, but then it started to feel one-sided, like they were just taking. And so I expressed. And I think the third time I was like, okay, this is, it's not working out. It feels weird. I don't like the way this makes me feel. And please understand that health is wealth. Okay. So we are told to watch what we eat, right? We are told to take vitamins, eat clean, exercise. But part of what is often neglected is stress, particularly emotional stress and the interpersonal relationships, the impact our interpersonal relationships have on our overall health and our immune system. If you are in a situation, this is why they ask you this question when you go to the doctor. If you're in a situation where you feel like emotionally drained or like unhappy or whatever it is, right? That is just as detrimental to your health as smoking or drinking or whatever. So if I'm in a situation where I'm interacting with a person and and that interaction with that person is starting to feel painful or hard, and not hard in like like a normal sense, because sometimes some relationships are hard and it requires work. But if you can tell that the person is there with you, it's different. That's a different kind of hardship than I'm talking about. But if it's something where it seems like they're getting all the benefit of the interaction of the relationship, and you're getting all of the bullshit, right? Benefit versus bullshit, right? Or they're just sort of like taking you for granted. We've all been there. That could cause you strife and emotional pain, and that can also deplete your immune system and make you sick. And with everything that's going on right now, I am not going to put myself in a situation where I'm interacting with people that drain me or will like essentially put my my well-being at risk. I'm just not going to do that. That shit also ages you guys. And I'm very protective. You guys have heard me say before, it's why I don't drink. It's why I try to get my, 7 to 8 hours of sleep. I try to drink water. I moisturize. I do my peels. Like I exercise. I eat clean, eat raw as much as possible. A balanced diet, take my vitamins, all of that. Because like I'm not cracking my face, right? Like I'm just like, I am not going to age. So to me, if it's a choice between you're going to give me stress lines, right? Or I'm going to like be like in a situation where my interactions with you are starting to feel more negative, and thus draining, then I have to make a choice. And as much as I cared for this individual, and I still do, as a person, and watching them develop and growing with them and sharing information with them, I had to make a choice. And that hurt, to just kind of clean cut that person out of my life. Did I want to do that? No. If, time goes by and they pause and reflect and they contact me and said, you know what, I'm sorry, you were right or whatever. It's not that I needed to be right, but I needed the person to be genuine and to hear me. Like, this is bullshit. Right. I will probably adjust my behavior and maybe won't be as giving, but I would definitely welcome that back into my life because I think they are worth it. And because of the time that I've put in, right? I don't like wasted time. I don't think anybody does. But in the meantime, just dealing with that of like interacting with this person all the time to all of a sudden just no contact, that has been painful. It has been painful. Right. But I'm here to tell you guys, and I'm telling you this, I'm speaking very candidly because so I don't know who needed to hear this, but you're not alone, right? I have another, a family friend, who they're going through depression, and on the surface, like they seem to have had everything, right? This person, had, good job, went to good school, like an athlete, very attractive, like had all of, everything that they wanted on surface. Like you could tell, like they could pick up whomever they want, like no dearth of like relationships and things like that. Like, and then come to find out that they were dealing with like proper depression. And it's like, holy shit. Like I didn't, wow. So it's like, how can you be depressed? Right. Of course, we know that depression is a chemical imbalance. I know it is. I know the feeling of it. But there are certain things that also contribute to it, right? Yes, it's a chemical imbalance and you can balance it. I treat mine with probiotics, getting enough sleep, right? And once again, like making sure that I have to protect myself, right? But most importantly, what has been most helpful for me has been sulforaphane in the form of broccoli sprouts extract and broccoli seed extract. I've mentioned it to you guys before. It works for me. I've tried marijuana. I've tried magic mushrooms, broccoli seed extract, broccoli sprouts extracts. I take in powder form in my smoothies. I take in pill form, and they have it on Amazon. Thorn makes a Crucera, and then there's another one called Pure Onco, and then there's just straight up broccoli sprouts like in pills. You can find it all online on Amazon or wherever else you get your vitamins. I'm sure IR probably has it too. That has helped me tremendously. But sometimes just there are certain triggers, right? Having the wrong people in your life. Maybe I wouldn't even make it about people because it's not about having the wrong people in your life. Because you could have the right people in your life, but the people in your life may have aspects of their personality that don't work for you, that cause you pain. And so when I listened to what this individual had to say, they were saying they felt as though there was something wrong with them, that they were weak because they were depressed, and they had all this going for them, and yet there's something wrong with them. And my response to that was, you don't have enough people in your life being honest with you and telling you, like, we all go through some bullshit. And I think that if that person knew that, it might make it easier for them to kind of get through the shit that they were getting through, that you're not alone, right? But part of the problem is, once again, it's toxic positivity. I went on Instagram yesterday and I saw, like, just scrolling through, it's not a person that I follow, but this person is a quote influencer. And super positive all the time. And they said, it was a post that popped up and it said, nothing like a trip to Mexico to visit an orphanage and I guess a place where people are like suffering from cancer, recovering from cancer, to just make me appreciate my life, right? Be positive. Everything's, like you just have to be grateful and be positive. And that didn't sit right with me. Like, so you went to another country to look at terrible things happening to people so that you could feel better about yourself. Like, that's a weird sort of sick mindset. And then you went and you filmed the whole thing, right? And here's me like sitting with with people who are sick or whatever, but you're looking happy and healthy, right? And you're sending this back to people in America like, hey, at least we're not them. That's fucked up to me. That was a fucked up mindset to me. And I'm sure this individual was well-meaning, so this is not a lambast or an attack on them, but the action. We tend to do this a lot as Westerners, as Americans, right? I'll see this on social media, particularly like people, white people will go to like Africa and take pictures of like Black people. I take that back actually, because I've seen people of color do this too. So I take that back. But they'll go to like, Africa or whatever, or Latin America and take pictures with people, or South America, Central America. They'll take pictures with people who are not doing as well. And then they'll say some things like, I'm so grateful, to be able to come and help these people out, knowing damn well that you're going to go back to your situation, where you have access to clean water. And then to use another life as like an example of how, like, why you should feel better about yourself because at least you're not them. It's like, here's the analogy, right? Imagine you're super beautiful. Okay. You're a super beautiful person. And then you went and found somebody that was like, let's just say ugly. Like, let's just be real. Okay. You found an ugly person, right? So you're super handsome dude. And you went and you took a picture with your ugly friend. And you're just like, I'm so grateful to just, to be handsome. Like, do you see how it's kind of fucked up, right? Like, it's a weird thing. And I don't know why that's okay. And this whole, like, just, you have to be positive all the time because, hey, there are people out there who don't have it as well. So you need to be just grateful for what you have. That shit's toxic as well. It's not okay, right? Because this is statistically proven, right? That there are people in Western countries are actually less happy than people in countries where they don't have everything. So to sort of make people feel as though however they're feeling today is not valid because there are people out there who have less than you is weird. Right? You should just be, yes, you should be grateful of your overall health, but not by comparison to somebody who may be in a worse situation than you. That's one statement. Secondly, if you have everything going well and you're still not feeling happy and you're still depressed, that's okay too. There's nothing wrong with that. Right? You shouldn't have to force yourself to be happy because there are other people who are in worse off situations than you. Like, what is that? Am I being clear here? What is that? Help people who are without homes, right? Don't go to them as a sort of like, oh, well, at least I'm not homeless. Like that's a weird vibe, yo. Like that does not pass the vibe check for me, right? Don't take pictures and utilize other people's lives for content. These are human beings. And also be mindful of the fact that the people who are seeing this, right? Because they say on social media, like people always just like, we just post the best of ourselves. And it's the same thing with like, that's, just in general, we're always trying to show people like how perfect our lives are. Not we, You guys have heard me talk about my shit. Like, I'm in pain all the time. Like, okay, if it's not physical, it's emotional. Most of the time, it's not emotional, it's psychological. Like, it's just, it's a thing. And a lot of the time, it's, self-imposed as well. These are just, it's real talk, right? And I'll come back to that and what that means. But it's you have to be mindful that you're not constantly presenting just this, oh my gosh, you got to be positive all the time, like that mindset to other people, because it's honestly it's fucking draining, and that shit's annoying. Like, I don't know how else to say it. Like, miss me with that bullshit. That is not real life. That is not real life. I'm not saying you have to be the extreme where like you're crying about something, you want to film that too, right? That feels just weird as well. But like, be a human being, and part of the human experience is like saying, yeah, you know what? I might be privileged to live in a country where I have access to clean water and a roof over my head. But for whatever reason, there's still pain in my life. And I am allowed to feel that pain. There's a scene I just watched. Oh, I don't know if I'm going to spoil. Fuck it. I just watched the third Kingsman movie. Brilliant movie, by the way. I don't understand the ratings, although like Google users gave it 85%, which I think is pretty good. And then the critics gave it like 40%. Like, fuck the critics. Go see the movie. It was really well done. There was a beautiful fight scene with Rasputin that I'm not going to spoil it, but it was art. It was just poetry in motion. It was gorgeous. I'd never seen a fight scene like that. It was beautiful. But there was a scene where a character is like in the trenches of war, and he starts like crying, and then he hears another person in the trenches with him, and he's missing his leg. The other person has like lost his leg has gotten blown up or whatever. So this character goes to him and says, oh my gosh, like, are you okay? And then he's like, like the guy without the legs just sitting there like almost like in shock because he's not feeling the pain, but he's just sitting there like essentially accepting his fate. Like, it is what it is. But the one character, he sort of had come from a life of privilege. And so he was like, he says to the character who's missing his leg, I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't be the one crying. Like, you're obviously like in a worse situation than me. And the individual who's missing their leg says like, it's okay. Like, just come here and, just let it out. Right? And that to me was very beautiful. Right? Because yes, this one individual was, was missing his leg, but he wasn't in pain at that moment. He had accepted whatever, like he had accepted his fate, right? And so he had taken the time to process what had happened to him, and was just like, all right, this is it, right? And then the other individual, the other character who had come from a privileged life, that was overwhelming for him. What he had just experienced, I'm trying not to spoil the movie, but was overwhelming for him, right? And so he let it out, because he was in pain, right? It might, and the guy who had kind of blown up his leg or whatever wasn't like, well, how dare you feel bad, for yourself when, like, look what happened to me. Like, it's not a pain competition. You know what I mean? It's, hey, you're in pain. You're a human being. Yes, you came from a life of privilege, but it doesn't matter. Like, right now, you are in it with me. And that is the human experience. Right? Right now, I am in it with you. I don't care if you, had nothing and you're in pain. But I don't, because you're in pain with me. All right? I don't care if you have everything, but you're still in pain, because you're in pain with me. Existence is pain. And one person's, level of suffering, some people who have experienced like traumatic things are almost like stronger as a result for it. So they know how to deal with day-to-day things compared to a person who might have had an easier life. And so they don't really know how to process things that to a person who has been through like a lot of traumatic events have gotten to learn or have had to learn over time or very quickly how to process. But the thing is, be there and also understand and say, like, listen, like, your pain is just as valid. And most importantly, you're not alone. Most importantly, you're not alone. We're together in this human experience. I don't say the things that I say. I don't talk about depression. I don't talk about anxiety or whatever. I don't say those things for anybody who feels sorry for me, because actually I like the pain. And I know you guys say this shit. I say this shit and you guys are like, what? The only freedom a puppet has is when they learn to love its string, is when it learns to love its strings. Here's the fact of the matter is, okay, life is pain. Whatever it is I'm going to have to, if whatever it is that I desire is going to come with pain, right? If you're going to work out, right? I've been working out. It's my New Year's resolution. So I started working out, biking and lifting. And the first couple of weeks, that shit hurt. That shit hurted. Okay? But it's just pain. I did an episode, right? I think the episode was called It's Just Pain. Go and listen to it. It has to do with pain. It's just pain. I'm not going to be deterred by the pain, right? It's the consistency that's most important. Sometimes there's just pain with change, right? So the pain that I'm in, that I've been in the last week, it's a type of emotional pain. I'm okay. Because there is pain with change. There is pain with growth. Moving is a pain. Growing is a pain. Changing jobs, changing situations, changing people, changing yourself. It's fucking pain. Pain is ubiquitous. You better just learn to accept that shit. Sometimes I'll cry. Sometimes it'll hit me like a wave, like a rush all over me. Do I take anything to mask it personally? No, I just sit with that shit. I also fast. All right. So if I'm not in emotional pain or physical pain or psychological pain, I'm also fasting. And I look at pain the way I look at hunger. That shit comes in waves. Right. So this morning, because I've started exercising, fasting has been a little bit more difficult for me because I'm largely sedentary. If I'm not recording a podcast, I'm painting. If I'm not painting, I'm sculpting. So I'm always kind of doing stuff, but I'm sitting to do stuff. So that's the issue. So I didn't really need to consume a lot of calories, but because now I'm exercising, I'm finding that my metabolism is kind of kicked up and I get hungry earlier than I normally do. So I used to be able to fast. I do intermittent fasting. So I used to be able to fast from let's say 8 p.m. to 2 p.m. I wouldn't eat in that window. And then from 2 to 7:30 or whatever, that would be when I would eat. And I wouldn't even eat a lot. I would have snack here to break my fast and then one big meal. And then that's it. That's my eating schedule. Look up fasting and life extension and what it does for your body and for aging and things like that. I'm committed, guys, to living a healthy life. So it's been a little bit harder for me. So this morning, right around 9:30, I was like, oh, fuck, I'm hungry. And that was painful, right? That hunger. The reason why you go immediately try to fix it, right? I'm hungry. I got to fix it. Is because I got to eat, right? Is because it's painful, right? So the reason why when you have a headache, you reach for marijuana or you reach for Tylenol or you reach for something is because you're trying to relieve the pain. But hunger is kind of the same thing for me. But I know that it, just like pain, it comes in waves, right? I'm not in a constant state of hunger. So the pain starts, or the hunger starts, and then I tell myself, nope, 12 o'clock, right? So I had to kind of modify whatever, my eating schedule, but eventually I'll get back to 2. I'm not going to add to my pain, right? But I told myself, rather, no, we're not going to eat till 12. And then I turned the pain into a meditation, and I looked within and I said, what does this feel like? What is this? Right? And it was like, okay, this is hunger. And I said, am I going to persist in this state of hunger for the next 3 hours? Well, we'll see. Let's see how this works. And sure enough, like in about an hour or so, like I just did something else. In about an hour or so, the hunger had sort of dissipated. And before I knew it, 12 came along, and then I had a snack or something like that. So it comes in waves. Same thing with physical pain. I actually went to go see, he says he's a chiropractor, but he's not. I started going to see a new chiropractor because the previous one I used to go to, like, while she did a good job, it was just like painful. And it's like, yo, lady, I'm already in pain. I don't need to like have you add to my pain in order to relieve the pain. It was just unpleasant for me. And so I did push through it for a while, but after a while I was just like, there's got to be a different approach. There's got to be a different way to deal with it without me just constantly like wincing, through a process. So the person I went to yesterday, is a new person, and I was in pain. I had sciatic, nerve has been triggered. And for the past month, it started in the back, and I was just like, I barely walk, but I, pushed through. It is what it is. But now it's kind of moved, and it's just like now the shooting pain in my right leg. And they were very gentle, and they kind of worked the muscle. And then today, I was like, oh wow, like I can barely feel anything. And that's good. But for the past month, I have turned the pain into a meditation. And I've learned that, so long as you're healthy, your body will heal itself, right? And so I've watched how, day to day or week to week, the pain does lessen over time. So I'm telling you that to say this. So for example, the individual that I had to separate myself from, it was painful. It just was. Change sometimes is painful, right? And day to day, the pain, the emotional pain kind of hit me the way like a hunger wave, right? With this whole, like, just reach out to them, right? To me is the same thing as like, just go eat, just break your fast. But what I told myself was, it's either I get through the pain of this moment to a point where eventually I will no longer feel pain when I think about this person, right? Maybe I'll just be able to celebrate the connection that we have for however long they were meant to be in my life. And like I said, who knows what the future holds? But I can only focus on right now and today, right? And deal with right now and today. Was there a temptation to unblock this person and, say, hey, listen, yes. But my thought process is, this is the same thing I told my cousin. I said, I can either feel the pain right now, and that shit's going to hurt and it's going to suck, right? And it's probably going to be a week or a month of pain. But then I will be over it. I'll be past it. And I'll deal with it the way I deal with my depression, the way I deal with my anxiety, the way I deal with my fucking sciatica and whatever the fuck else happens. My mom just had surgery, and it's the first time I've ever seen her in the hospital. And so the anxiety around that and seeing her in pain and seeing her get wheeled away, that was emotionally painful. That was like 2 weeks ago. So I'm dealing with a lot of stuff, right? Like flying back and forth to see them and just knowing I can't be there to help them. There's a lot going on. Okay. It's okay. Right. What I told my friend was either, my cousin, who's my bestie, hey, Jay, I know you're not listening, or if you are, then you finally listen to my podcast. Like, you're the only person, like all of these listeners, all these people, like my best friend, like, but he's like, his response is like, I talk to you all the time. It's like basically having a podcast. I'm like, no, it's not, because there's some stuff that I say on the podcast that won't get triggered in a conversation because of the nature of a conversation day to day. Anyway, I digress. But I said to him, I was like, listen, I can either deal with the pain of like it's going to suck for the first week. It is. It's going to fucking suck. And then the second week is going to suck, but it's not going to fucking suck. Right. And then like the third week, it's just going to like, going to be like, okay. And then like in a month, I'll be fine. So I'm just prepared to like just process this shit over a month. So it's either I process this now or I continue to allow what I feel like or what I perceived as, where I'm putting in all this effort and this person isn't meeting me halfway, right? I'm putting all this effort to be a good friend. And this person, it feels like, I'm not saying I'm right, but my perception is this is how it feels. It feels one-sided, right? Dragging this shit so that every interaction I have with this person is painful. And it's not going to get better. Because that's who they've shown me to be. That's who they have shown me, right? Was it Maya Angelou that says, when people show you who they are, believe them? So they're showing me who they are. And while, 80% of their personality is cool, there's this 20% that like is actually pretty stressful for me. Doesn't work for me. It's just we're incompatible at that 20%. And every interaction I have with this person where that 20% gets triggered, it touches something that is emotionally traumatizing for me. I have this thing about like rejection. And so every time I interact with them, their behavior feels like a rejection and it's too triggering for me. And so if I stayed friends with this person, for let's say years, then because I didn't just bite the bullet and take that shit for a month, I now have to deal with years of pain. Doesn't seem like a fair trade to me. So I'd much rather just rip off the Band-Aid now and just eat it, right? Than prolong this thing, right? Where it's a constant painful interaction, right? I'm not advocating just cut people off for no reason, right? This is, I took the time, to obviously think this through. And there are people in my life that when I express to them, I don't like this behavior, this is how it makes me feel. They adjust and they adapt for the most part. You can see a genuine effort, right? Sometimes they slip, but long term and overall, you see a genuine effort. Like you could tell that they genuinely care. And so those people, like, keep them in your life. But if you're constantly expressing to a person like, hey, when you do this, it makes me feel this way. And they're lip serving you like one thing, but their actions are saying something different. Might as well just eat the pain and cut it off, because otherwise you're running the risk of stretching this shit out and stressing yourself out. I'm sorry, honey, but nobody's worth the fucking wrinkles. Okay. So I don't know who needed to hear that. But there's the information. But overall, when I, was in the process of sort of like cutting this person off, I felt I did it halfway. It was partly unconscious, but partly conscious. And what I mean by that is that on an unconscious level, I knew like, okay, this person is going to like keep doing this. But I should say on a conscious level, but on an unconscious level, when I made the decision and I just started texting them, I was not there, right? Like ego took over or the avatar took over, or what I said was actually I lost myself to the narrative because there was other ways that I could handle the situation, right? But like just giving myself space and not reacting. But like you guys have heard me talk about non-reactivity. It was so interesting at that moment when I just like I guess my unconscious made the decision to cut this person off, or to take a step back, or just like to remove access from me, right? Remove access. Remove this individual's access to me. I watched as like my hands just grabbed the phone and I just started texting. And in hindsight, I looked back in that moment and I said, you know what, that was the narrative taking over. What I mean by that is once, like I said at the beginning of this episode, there's an overall narrative that drives our lives. We have limited free will. There's only so many things that we can do. And even if you are a conscious person, which I am, which you are, sometimes you lose yourself to the narrative. The narrative takes over. Sometimes there's a story, there's something that needs to be done at a particular point in time. And you'll feel it. It's a surreal experience, right? You sort of like become an observer in your own life. And then you just like start doing things that like, you probably should take a step back and pause and reflect. But the avatar takes over and it just does this thing before you even have a chance to do it. And that happened. And I said to myself, I was like, that's the narrative taking over. For whatever reason, that had to be the moment in which that person got cut off. And I don't know what impact my separating myself from them is having in their life, because they're not in my life anymore. But I hope, I know that it's for some greater good. And I hope that, they learn from it and they pause and reflect, and they're more mindful of how they treat people who come into their lives, right? Especially genuine people, right? Because I've learned from it as well. I'm not going to change who I am. I'm still going to be very giving. But I have learned to communicate more clearly and more definitively, right? Because I think that lends itself to being more honest, and not just with other people, but with yourself and with who you are and who you want to be, at least in this incarnation, right? In this go. Okay. So don't know why or who needed to hear that, all of that, but ultimately is worth repeating. You are not alone in your pain. I wish we lived in a world where more people were honest about that, right? Honest about their anxiety, honest about their depression, honest about, their fears. And not like in a way to like manipulate people, or just, I had a really good conversation with like my sister-in-law. And she, like I'd mentioned like depression to her. And I mentioned there was a moment in time when I actually, legit was like, fuck this world, I'm out. Suicide. And she was like, I was not ever expecting that from you. You seem so perfect. And I had to pause and reflect on that, because I was like, I'm not fucking perfect. And I hope I'm not putting out that energy that I'm like infallible and like nothing's wrong with me. Like that to me, that when I heard that, I was like, that needs to stop. I don't want people perceiving me in that way at all. Like I have issues, okay? like I do, okay? And so we started having like a genuine conversation, and come to find out, she was like, I wouldn't, now that we talk about it, because I explained what depression is, what happens is you just wake up feeling fucked up. Like it could be a sunny day, you could be in a mansion, like everything on paper could look and feel great and be going great, but it's a chemical thing. You'll just feel like shit. Like you just feel like a bag of shit. Doesn't matter what's going on externally. And maybe there's some people who, I think Michael Che put it this way, like that maybe if you were like in a bad situation, right? Then the circumstances almost kind of hide your depression, right? Like if you were in a situation where you're just surrounded by like shitty people, or you're in like a war zone, or I don't know, like the analogy that Michael Che used was slavery. He's like, it's hard to really talk about like you being depressed if you're, like a slave or whatever, like mental health issues, when you're in a situation that is, mentally fucking unhealthy. But if you are in a situation where on paper everything looks great and you still wake up feeling like shit, it's not like you're ungrateful, right? My brother said that to me. He's like, "Why don't you just go for a walk? I don't understand how like you could be depressed when like you like look at your life." And I'm like, "Yo, fuck off." Like, that should tell you that there's an issue. It's not just about my circumstances, right? When I was in a situation where circumstances were tough, right? That feeling that I woke up with, it masked. Right. My circumstances masked the chemical imbalance. Right. So when I woke up feeling sad, you're programmed, you're socialized to find an external cause of that sadness. Right. And so if your life is kind of fucked up and you wake up feeling sad, right, or wake up feeling depressed, or like you're chemically, depleted, or whatever, of whatever hormone or, chemical that your brain needs in order for you to not feel depressed, it was really easy for you to look around and say, oh, I'm depressed because of this. But if you have no external circumstances that feed, that you can blame on that feeling of sadness, then clearly that allows you to take a step back and go, okay, there's something wrong here with like my brain, right? But it's not that there's something wrong with you. You're just a consciousness having an experience, right? It's just something wrong with your brain. So the analogy that I use with my sister-in-law to explain what depression is, I said, just think of it like your car. And there's just a certain like fluid that your car's engine needs to run optimally, right? It's still going to run without this fluid or with this fluid low, but it's not going to run the way it's intended. And that's what depression is, clinical depression, right? And oftentimes, if you aren't aware of that, especially if you're in a bad situation or a bad environment or whatever it is, you'll think that you won't realize that this is a chemical thing. You'll think it's an external thing, right? And then by me, like just open and candidly just being like, yeah, sometimes I want to fucking dip out of this world. Like, and the only things that are keeping me here are the people that I care about. I would never want to hurt them. Right. So I'm going to just keep going. But, I also mentioned like the stoic mindset, like, you've lived one day, you kind of lived the whole day. Like after a while, it's like, it's tedious, whatever. And I even joked, and she joked with me about how, like, if they told us like a comet was coming, right, I wouldn't be like one of those people like saying, oh, I got to figure out a way to like get away from where the comet's going to hit. Like I would be trying to go towards the comet because like I'm not trying to like, I'm not trying to live in a world after all that shit happens. Like it's hard enough as it is, like just with nothing happening. Like I don't need surviving once like our infrastructure has fucking completely been destroyed, like the fucking Walking Dead. Like I always watch shows like that, like The Walking Dead. And they kind of come for people who like take their lives. This is real talk. At the beginning of like a zombie apocalypse, and they call them cowards. I'm like, okay, call me a coward, but you just got your face eaten. So like, you know what? I'm good. That's not the reality experience that I signed up for. So enjoy that shit. I'm good. Like there's cannibals now. I don't want, there's none of that I want. Right? There's none of that I want. And the fact that her and I were able to like have that conversation and actually laugh about it, right? Was like, it was endearing rather. And it kind of formed a closer bond. And she finally admitted to me, she was like, I've never really been a happy person. Like I've been the kind of person where I just kind of wake up like, oh, okay, well, here we are again. You know what I mean? And there's a couple other things that she admitted to me that obviously I'm not going to tell you guys, but it helped bridge a gap with somebody that I didn't really know very well. And it was a common thing, right? And it was a shared fucking human experience, right? And we need to do more of that. Right. So it doesn't help anybody if you're one of these people. I mean, you're probably not listening all the way through if you are one of these people, so that's fine. But it doesn't help anybody if you are one of those people who you're always just like, oh, look at me, like everything is positive. Like, stop that shit, please. You don't have to be smiling all the fucking time, please. Okay? Like, it causes wrinkles, first of all. And secondly, like, it's just nobody is that fucking happy. Nobody is that fucking happy. Unless you're high. And even that, like, that shit hits you, there's always a balance. Okay? So just be real. You don't have to be positive all the time. You don't have to be happy all the time. It helps other people to know that they're not alone in the shit. All right? Thanks for listening.